It's been more than 1,100 days since Vladimir Putin ordered Russian troops to invade Ukraine. In the more than 3 years of fighting, Russia now controls about 20% of Ukraine's eastern territory. President Zelenskyy has repeatedly said the meeting taking place here in Anchorage tomorrow should include no discussions of land swaps to end the war. President Trump today said he believes peace is possible. To help set expectations for the face-to-face, I talked to Richard Haass, a former diplomat who has worked in several administrations. So on the eve of this summit, what is the one strategic objective for President Trump, do you think?
There's probably two: what you want to accomplish and what you want to avoid. What you'd like to accomplish is obviously a breakthrough to bring about a cessation of hostilities, a ceasefire. We're not talking about permanent legal peace. We're talking about something that's more modest but still ambitious. What you want to avoid is peace at any price, essentially a one-sided arrangement that adopts Moscow's agenda and throws Ukraine under the bus.
And what's Vladimir Putin's strategic objective?
He either wants to be free to continue the war without being blamed for it, or he gets a political outcome that gives him a lot of what he wants, not necessarily all of what he wants, but it would be a very useful way station for him. During
the Cold War, when the American president and the Russian leader met, it said something about the state of that conflict. What does a meeting between Putin and Trump say about the world we live in now?
What it tells me more than anything is that the goal of somehow integrating Russia into the world and into the West after the end of the Cold War, the demise of the Soviet Union, failed. We can argue, historians will argue, whether it failed because of our policy or whether it failed because of the nature of Russia, its political culture married to Vladimir Putin's political agenda. But however we got to where we are, this is clearly not the world that people envisioned 35 years ago.
Help me think about, Richard, the moral frame we should put on this meeting or the conflict in general. So people will say since the Treaty of Westphalia, there's been a belief that territories should be protected.
Yeah.
But that's not always been the case. Help us understand what the moral frame is for this.
John, we live in a world where there's not a lot of rules. But to the extent there is a fairly widely accepted rule, and it goes back to the mid-17th century, it's the idea that sovereignty, that sovereign countries is the basic building block of what international order there is, that essentially territory ought not to be acquired by force. We ought to respect borders. And we saw that violated, say, right after the end of the Cold War in 1990 when Saddam Hussein and Iraq invaded Kuwait. And what did the United States do? We organized an international coalition that essentially forced Iraq out of Kuwait. Well, here we had, first in 2014, then again 3.5 years ago, Russia invade Ukraine and take territory. So this violates the fundamental cardinal rule of international order. To compromise on it, I think, would be a disaster, not just in principle, not just what it would mean for Ukraine, but why does anybody think Vladimir Putin would stop there? So the stakes here are enormous, and what is done here will have tremendous repercussions, not just for the immediate parties, but more broadly in the world.
What leverage does Donald Trump have over Vladimir Putin?
I believe the biggest leverage that President Trump has with President Putin is what we would do with Ukraine. If you really want to change Putin's calculus, you've got to disabuse Putin of one notion: that time is on his side. That by continuing this war, Russia will gradually grind and grind and grind and get what it wants. All President Trump has to do is say, Vlad, ain't going to happen. I will not let you win this war militarily, and I will provide Ukraine enough military means and intelligence that it can resist all your advances on the battlefield. Time and continued war will not be to your advantage. That is the only way we can bring this war to an end.
It's great, Richard. Thank you. That's wonderful.